think a lot of times the excuse for ignoring the things that the CCP is doing foreign policy wise overseas with things like the Belt and Road and things like what they're doing in the Solomons is that, well, they're not exporting their authoritarianism. They're just doing economic things, like they're just doing business, et cetera, et cetera. But from what you're saying, it seems like it's pretty clear that this is actually them exporting authoritarianism. And even recently, there was like I think a report in Axios that was looking at a school in Tanzania that was educating African leaders. That was where the CCP was explicitly doing things like teaching them how to have essentially like a one party state, how to like elevate their ruling parties above the government, et cetera, et cetera. And I just wanted to ask you, how do you think that there is an acknowledgement at all now in the American government or in Western governments that this is the CCP exporting authoritarianism, or is it just not clear enough?
Well, I think there's more of an awareness than there's ever been, although it's probably 25 years too late. Uh, but there is an awareness now, and certainly compared to 4 or 5 years ago, when you couldn't even say China was an adversary, and that was if you were in the military. So there is an awareness that this is the nature of the Chinese Communist Party, and really what you described, Shelley. It's what else would we expect of a communist party if when they can't help themselves, sort of like a dog licks itself. It just can't help it, and the one party state is their thing. There's nothing democratic or consensual about the CCP. Power comes out of the barrel of a gun. The idea of an election has a fair election is about like a vampire looking at a cross, uh, to this system. And that's what you get when you apply, when it goes overseas. It just can't be helped. And there's sort of so it actually is a pretty good match for a certain type of person who wants to run a country, wants to loot it, wants to do very well for himself, and wants that power. But when you get actual people who understand, how a sort of consensual government works, how an honest government works, they just repulsed by what happens. There's a certain affinity that certain people have for what the CCP has to offer. But the West, once again, can't expect its ideas to sell itself. It has to be out there and has to be in the fight. And too often it isn't. It's just an assumption that, well, as things will work out, or yeah, we're better than them, the arc of history, et cetera, et cetera. But not quite. Sort of a thug with a lot of money can burrow himself into a country pretty well if he wants to and make life miserable. But there is more awareness than there ever has been. At the same time, we're now having successive American officials making the pilgrimage to China, to the PRC, to talk to the Chinese. I guess the latest is Gina Raimondo, of Secretary of Commerce. What on earth they expect to accomplish, I'm not sure. There is no deal to be cut, but there's more of an awareness than there ever has been. But I'm not sure that we're willing to do what's necessary to take them on.
Well, you recently wrote an article, and I'll put the link below, called "The Way to Take on China is to Make It Personal." So, can you tell us about those tactics and how the U.S. government could apply things to put pressure on China by making it personal?
Sure. The some things even I can figure out, and this is one of them. And if you look at the nature of the Chinese Communist Party and that regime, well, is willing to let its citizens suffer to no end to keep power, so they can keep power. They don't care. They'd be glad to sacrifice millions in a fight if necessary. Xi Jinping has even said, well, you just may have to eat bitterness or eat grass, to sort of keep us in power, basically. And so that's something you have to consider is, what is it? These people are not going to operate based on what is good for the bulk of their population. They're going to operate on what is best for them personally. And the one thing that scares the hell out of them is the immense wealth that they have amassed. These are the top people in the Chinese Communist Party, this immense wealth, much of it which is overseas. And they also ideally have a few relatives overseas with green cards. They have businesses overseas. And it's hidden over there. And ironically, it's hidden in places like the United States, UK, Australia, Canada. And they're not supposed to do that. So the idea that I point out in the article is, let's find this stuff, let's expose it, and make sure that every single person in China knows this. When you have 500 million people in China who live on $5 a day, well, they're not going to be very happy about their leaders who have, 6 condos in New York City and 3 businesses and have a half dozen relatives who are ensconced in the United States. And this is a very attractive line of attack that would actually put some real pressure on the Chinese Communist leadership. I would suggest that actually us building our military, while it's important, and even applying economic sanctions on China, while those can be useful, it doesn't have anywhere near the personal threat, the personal fear that exposing this ill-gotten wealth that has been looted from China and moved overseas. That will really get you some mileage. And we saw this happen actually around 2011-12, when Bloomberg and the New York Times did some excellent investigative reporting, and they uncovered the overseas wealth of certain Chinese Communist Party leadership, including Xi Jinping's family. And this is one thing that really infuriated and scared the top dogs in the CCP. And they put the pressure on Bloomberg and New York Times. Bloomberg rolled over completely. New York Times less so, but they haven't covered the topic. And I was even told recently by somebody that a reporter for a very well-respected outlet, and there are a few, well, not many, but there are a few, was told, you can write about anything, but not about CCP leaders' wealth or Xi Jinping's wealth. And that shows you just how much of a third rail this is for the West, and we should know better about this. I don't know why the US government hasn't jumped on this opportunity, but this is something we should be exposing. One good way to do this would be just make it like, say, every Tuesday afternoon. Voice of America is going to announce so-and-so has this, this, and this. And you'd have people standing by to find out what exactly it is. And so it's one thing for these the top people in the Chinese Communist Party to explain China's problems as the West picking on it, America trying to contain it, the century of humiliation, et cetera, and it's another thing to explain personally why you have all this loot stashed overseas. Put them in that position. But otherwise, I'm not so sure that we are able to apply enough pressure to really shape behavior. But this is one thing that these kind of people don't like. And not just in China, but you see this in every dictatorship. The top people live very well, and they don't like it when it's exposed. When the Panama Papers were released in 2016, China responded similarly, as some of the top people had companies that were exposed. So it shows just how sensitive this is, and with a little effort, it's not at all hard to figure it out. If good investigative reporters could do it, just one occasion, think of what more investigative reporters could do, or think of what a government could do. And this is one area where we do have some very good resources. For some reason, we don't play this game. We don't play this card, and it's a mystery to me why we don't. But I would rather have us do this and try this more than have to fight it out and lose tens of thousands of lives or more.
I mean, I think everyone would. Well, it gives some hope that there is this path to weakening the CCP leadership without having to actually, fight in a military warfare. So,
I mean, but that would destabilize China maybe, and the CCP might be bad, but at least it's stable.
Oh, shit.
Hearing that.
So, do you work for the State Department, Shelley?
I'm going to take the Foreign Service exam.
Yeah, she used to work for the U.S. Navy. I heard this so many times. The last thing we want is a nuclear-armed China that's having problems. Well, look, we've lived with Pakistan with nuclear weapons. I'd rather take my chances with an irate Chinese Communist Party leadership that's worried about these 500 million people asking about their money. I'd take my chances with that rather than a shootout if I could. So hopefully we'll wise up. But I mean, it's so easy and it's so could be so productive. But who knows? Maybe one of these days.
It seems like it's similar to the idea behind the Magnitsky sanctions, which is the idea that you're going to target the personal wealth of these corrupt officials, but you don't even have to sanction them in this case. You're just saying just expose what they have.
That would be enough. The McGinsky sanctions potentially are good, but you've got to really do them right, and you have got to play really rough. They're kind of just a pinprick, but this would be a good one. And in fact, if you could get, I really like that idea of releasing it at a certain time of the week, and everybody knows it, and you're just standing by to see what juicy stuff we've got now. And also, you might, as part of the deal, start seizing some of these assets that you've got your hands on. After all, Chinese people are only allowed to move $50,000 in convertible currency in dollars out of the country every year. So when somebody's buying, say, a house in Hancock Park, LA, for $3 million, well, by definition, that's money that shouldn't be coming out of China. So we would just be helping them out, enforcing their laws if we did this. But there's all sorts of opportunities for any reasonably competent political warrior.
I mean, Xi Jinping is running an anti-corruption campaign.
Yeah, maybe we should just let Xi Jinping handle it.
Yeah,
that was not where I was going with that.